Hello, it's Mr. Turek, and today we're going to make a kaleidoscope type image. I've collected some similar looking images of flowers here, and I'm just going to use these for my kaleidoscope. So open up Photoshop and then create a new document. And you can make your document any size you want. Let's just make it 8 by 12. Give it a name, Kaleidoscope. Make sure you attach your own name to it. And then keep the resolution pretty high. And you can make it any orientation you want. I'm going to make mine portrait. Alright, when your file opens, you're going to place some of your images in there, make selections of them to isolate them, and then you're going to arrange them in kind of a kaleidoscope pattern. So, first, File, Place Embed, find your kaleidoscope images. Okay. When you place your image in the file, just hit the check mark to confirm it, and then we'll make a selection to isolate this. One of the first steps you're going to do to isolate this is quick select. So go to your quick select tool or hit the W on your keyboard. And again, to make the brush larger or smaller, you just use the bracket keys. And we're just going to add to our selection, so I'm going to click on all of the flower here. I'm just going to click and drag to make a real quick, easy selection. Doesn't have to be perfect. One of the ways we can refine our selection is to use the Select and Mask workspace. So the Select and Mask workspace is this button right here in your options bar for the quick select tool. It's also in Select and Mask, and the hotkey is Alt-Control-R. So we're going to enter that workspace. And when we do, it's going to look a lot like Quick Mask, and it's pretty similar to Quick Mask. You have a bunch of fancy tools over here that are basically your normal selection tools. So you have the Quick Select tool we were just using, you have the Refine Edge brush tool, and you have the regular brush tool. And the way this works is kind of like a combination of your selection tools and the quick mask mode. So I'm going to use the Refine Edge brush tool to just show you how this works. And I'm going to zoom into an area where my edge is a little ambiguous. And I can just sort of paint a little bit of my edge here. And it'll sort of refine that for me. It'll kind of find the detected edge right there. I'll add that to my selection. This is actually better for when you're making selections of really complicated, hairy, just like if you're making a selection of like a dog and you wanted to select the hair on the dog. This is a great way to do that. I'm just using it for those areas where a quick select didn't work. I can also use the brush tool. The brush tool is over here in the toolbox, or I could hit the B key, and it works just like it does in Quick Mask. If I click on the brush tool, I can adjust the size of it. And then instead of black and white, it just has a plus and a minus. So if we want to add or subtract, I'm going to hit Ctrl+Z. That was wrong. The Alt key will toggle to subtract. I'm actually going to subtract here. I want to get rid of this red right here. So I'm going to paint that away. Nice and easy. Again, this is just a quick, fast way to sort of tell it what you want to be a part of your selection. And then over on the right here, we have a bunch of other options for the Select and Mask workspace. The first options we're going to have are the view modes, and these are kind of helpful because they can kind of show you, like say, what does your selection actually look like in black and white? So this is telling me that, you know, I got a soft edge here, a little bit of fuzziness there. You can switch it to a layer on layers, and that'll show you how much of the visible pixels are still there. You can switch it to marching ants. And this can be really helpful because it just sort of gives you a sense of like, okay, I need to make, if I want that to be a hard edge selection, I know I need to make my brush, maybe I need a harder edge brush here, and I need to paint that softness away. And then I can go to my view modes here and I can look at that and then, oh, okay, I made it a hard edge there. Under edge detection, I can turn on smart radius, and I can turn on my radius. And that just like automatically adds some detection to my edges here and includes some extra pixels. You know, it's just like a handy like automatic feature. Under the global refinements, we can smooth it, we can add a bit of feather, we can shift the edge just a little bit. This is similar to the select to modify commands we used in a previous assignment where we went to select, modify, expand, and select, modify, feather. Again, if you want to see what these are doing, switch to like black and white mode. And if we turn up the feather here, our edges get a little fuzzy. If we turn up the contrast, it sort of recognizes where the contrast between the edges is and snaps into there. If we want to shift the edges, we can push them out or in. All right, when we're done messing with our selection in here, we're going to go down to the output settings. And we could do a new layer with the layer mask, but for what we're going to do, all we want is a selection. So we're going to change the output to selection, and we're going to click OK. And that's going to give us just a nice clean selection of our object here. Going to hit copy and paste. So Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V. And then we can delete this layer here because we don't really need all this extra information anymore. So click and drag that down to delete. All right, so now that my flower is isolated and it's on its own layer, I can switch to the move tool. And the transform control should already be on. So I can, you know, if I want to make it a little smaller, I can hold down the shift key and scale it a little bit smaller and confirm that transformation. And then what I want to do is I want to create like a kaleidoscope effect. So I'm going to copy it 4 times and use a flip transformation. But before I do that, let's set up some guides here and kind of organize our document into 4 sections. All right, to create guides, you're going to click and drag the guides from your ruler. If you don't see your ruler, go to View and make sure Rulers is turned on. And then I would also say turn on Snap. Okay? Snap is going to mean that your layers are going to snap to the guides. So we're going to put a guide at about halfway here. So I'm going to click and drag this guide to 4, and that's halfway. I'm going to click and drag this down to 6. Our document's 8 by 12, so that's half and half. All right, now I'm going to copy and paste my layer, and I'm going to flip it. So to do that, it's pretty easy. Just take your layer, hit Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V. That makes a copy of it. We can move it over here, and notice because snap is turned on, like everything is sort of snapping to our guides. And then I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. All right, so now I'm going to copy my object 2 more times, and I'm going to flip them. I can do this 1 of 2 ways. I could copy both of them at the same time, or I can copy it individually twice and flip them both times. I'm actually going to copy both of these at the same time. So I'm going to go down to my layer panel, And hold down the Shift key and select both layers. I'm going to hit Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V, and that'll copy it. We can move those down here. And then I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, and instead of flipping horizontal, we're going to flip vertically. Alright, so it would be really handy if we could copy all 4 of these flowers together and rearrange them as one layer. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a snapshot of all of these layers here. Before we do that, make sure you double click on your background layer to make it editable layer, and then just hide it. And then go to your top layer, click on your top layer, and hit Shift, Control, Alt, and E. And that is going to make what's called a stamp visible. It's stamping all the visible layers and isolating them on one layer. So now all 4 of these flowers are this layer 5 right here. And if we scale them together, holding Shift and Alt at the same time, it's going to scale it in the center of our image. We can hit the check mark right there. And I could just copy and paste this again. Copy, paste. Move that to the middle. And maybe this time we rotate it and make it a little bit smaller. Whoa. Gotta hold that Shift key and the Alt key. Oh, that's weird. It's doing a different kind of stretch. And confirm our transformation. Alright, let's mess around with gradients. We're going to add a new layer. So go down to your layer panel and just click the new layer button to make a new blank layer. And we're going to go to the gradient tool. The gradient tool is over here. It's kind of in the middle of your toolbox. You're going to click on it. You're going to notice that the option bar is going to change. I'm actually going to switch it to a radial gradient. Okay. And radial gradients are simply gradients that are circular. If you want to adjust what colors are in the gradient, right now it's set to black, red, and white. You're going to hit the drop down and you can see some presets, or just double click on it. And that's going to open the gradient editor dialog box. And the way this works is real simple. There's these little sliders, and you can adjust that however you want. Notice it changes how it blends, changes the colors. If you click on these little sliders, which are called stops, and then click on the color, you can open up the color picker. You can pick different colors. Let's do teal, red, and yellow. That looks really crazy. The top stops right here, these are opacity stops. So if you only want it to be like semi-transparent, you can use these opacity stops to sort of turn that down. And then, you know, obviously you have the smoothness here, and you can change it to noise and do all sorts of stuff. You can even save it as a preset in your preset menu. So if I want to give it a name, custom, teal, red, yellow, I'll just save that as a gradient. And should save it in there. Clicking new will save it as a preset. And anytime you want to load that up into a different file, you can load it from that gradient folder. And it should be in this preset folder as well. So once you're done editing your gradient, click OK. And then to use a gradient tool, it's real simple. You're just going to click and drag. And I'm actually going to click and drag from the center. And that's going to give me a full gradient. So I can do one of two things with this gradient. I could make it my background, or I could blend it with some of these other layers. So I'm going to actually blend it with this middle layer here. And the way to do that is just to mess with the blending mode. So I'm going to go click on my gradient layer. I've moved it down a couple layers in my stacking order. And I'm going to change the blending mode. Let's change it to hue. That looks interesting. All right. And I could leave it like this, or I could clip it to just one layer. So again, when you use like an adjustment layer, you usually have a little button for a clipping mask or like a layer mask. The hotkey for layer masking is just to simply hover between the two layers and hold down the Alt key, and your cursor should change to this, and that is just you telling the layer to mask to just one layer below. So I have it masking to just that middle layer right there, and that's kind of changed the inside edge of this rose here blue, and the outside edge is kind of a nice like orangish yellow. That's kind of cool. That kind of changes the color of these roses. Another way to change the color of some of your layers is the color replacement tool, which is kind of a fun tool to mess around with. I'm actually going to switch to this middle row of roses, so I'm going to turn off my other layers visibility in the layer panel. And I'm going to make sure that middle layer is active. I'm actually going to zoom in just a little bit here. And the color replacement tool is in the brush tool group. So if I click and hold on my brush tool and I go to color replacement tool, that's going to give me this tool. And there's actually, a bunch of different settings up here. You can leave it at sampling continuous. This is by far the most useful. You can also do it sampling once. Like if you only want it to change the first color you sample and you want to set that color to pink, you can use this. You could have it just sampling the background, so anytime it sees your background color, it only changes that color. Just mess around with these options. I'm not going to explain them all right here. I'm just going to use the continuous sampling. The way it works is like a normal brush tool. And let's say I wanted to change these pink roses to light blue roses. So let's pick a light blue color, my color picker. And if I start painting, anytime I hit that pink with my middle cursor, it's just going to automatically change it to this bluish color. And you know what? It's not perfect, but it's kind of fun. You can sort of play around with it to sort of make your objects a bit more multicolored, because it's not perfect, and that can be sort of fun, make things look a bit wilder, a bit crazier. If I turn back on my other layers, kind of fits in with the middle ring here. It's getting blue, orange, and then pink. Alright, so now I'm going to go through all those steps in kind of rapid succession just to show you sort of the workflow for this assignment. First things first, I'm just going to group these roses all into one group. Shift-click in my layer panel. And then if you click on this little folder icon, it puts them in one group. And that can be kind of handy if you just want to like put layers together and organize them. So first step, File, Place Embedded. Let's place this yellow flower. All right, confirm placement. Go to my quick select. Make a quick selection of all the yellow in here. That looks pretty good. Let's go to select a mask. See if there's any edits I need to make here. Doesn't really look like it. This kind of looks good already. If I want, I could make some adjustments here. Turn on Smart Radius. Expand edges out just a little bit. We're going to output to selection. So if I don't have any edits in here, I'm just going to click OK. All right, I got my selection made. So I'm going to hit Copy, Paste. I'm going to delete the old layer. I'm going to go to my new layer and switch to the Move tool. I'm just going to shrink this just a little bit. I'm going to put it up here in my upper right hand quadrant. Line it up. My guides. Okay. And then let's flip it. We can do that a couple different ways. I'm going to use just copies. So I'm going to put my center marker in here. I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. And I forgot to copy it. Whoops. Copy, paste. Copy, paste. There we go. Now let's flip it. Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. We're going to select both of these. Put the cursor in the middle, copy, paste. There we go, cursor in the middle. Edit, transform, flip vertical. Oop. Yeah, you put that cursor in the right place, it'll flip it along the axis for you. All right, so check mark to confirm that. I'm going to make sure this is the only visible group, and I'm going to use Shift-Ctrl+Alt+E to make a snapshot. And I'm going to actually make these bigger and fill in our background just a little bit here. So let's maybe put these at the bottom behind our other group. And for these, maybe we merge these together. So we're going to go Layer, Merge Layers, and we'll just make these a little bit larger. Okay, turn on our visibility here, move these guys on top. So that's nice, it's a yellow background. We can add a gradient to this. Switch to our gradient tool, open that, let's switch it to this, brand new layer, gradient out to here. Didn't quite work. Go back a step, try again, click and drag out a little further. There we go. Change the blend mode to pin light. Oh, that doesn't look good. Maybe soft light. You can kind of cycle through these. Find one we like. That's weird. Let's go with that. And we're going to mask it to the bottom layer here. Maybe copy it. Only mask it to that one. How about that? All right. Let's do one more thing here. Alright, so I've isolated this flower image here, and one of the last things we're going to show you is how to use the pen tool to make a vector mask. And so this is kind of a specific set of steps. You're not actually going to master how to use the pen tool at all, but I figured I'd just show you this for fun. So once you have like an isolated object like this, switch to your pen tool. And your pen tool is kind of at the bottom of your toolbox. And the way it works is pretty straightforward, but again, it can be kind of frustrating. When you click once, it makes straight lines. And between these lines are these points, anchor points. When you click and drag an anchor point, it makes a curved line. And you can use it to make all sorts of weird blobby shapes. You can click and drag a bunch of points, a bunch of anchor points. But when you're all done making your shape, go back to the start. And when you hover over your start point, it'll make that little complete the circle sign. And that's how you know you're closing your path. So click on your last point. And you have a vector path. And the cool thing about this is that you can edit it later. It's not like a polygon lasso selection. It's different. So you'll notice in your layer panel that you're going to have this shape layer. And you're also going to go to your pass tab here. And you're going to notice that there's a shape path. What we're going to do is we're going to copy that so that that path becomes our vector mask. So you're going to click and drag this shape path down to the new path button and let go of it. That's going to make a copy of it. And under your layers panel, you're going to click onto the layer you want to mask with that shape path. When you look at your path panel, you notice that copy is still there. Okay. So make sure you have a layer there. Make sure you copied that shape path in your paths panel. And then you're going to go up to Layer, Vector Mask, and Current Path. And what that did is that took that path in the path panel and it made it a vector mask. So you can hide your shape path now. And you can edit this vector mask. The way you edit it is with the pen tool and the selection tool. The selection tool is on the bottom here. It's called the direct select tool. There's also the path selection tool, but you don't really need that right now. Click and hold to use the direct select tool. And what that's going to allow you to do is that's going to allow you to click on anchor points and adjust them. So notice, like, my lines are staying nice and straight, but I can adjust them by clicking on anchor points. I could click on the path and move the whole path. This is kind of a cool way to make a hard edge shape. If I switch to my pen tool, I can like hover over anchor points and delete them. I don't like them. And basically you have this hard-edged, nice clean vector mask over one of your images. Another way to make a hard-edge selection is with the Polygonal lasso tool. You'll remember using this from the phone tutorial. If you click and hold on the lasso tool, you'll go to the Polygonal lasso tool. And again, the way it works is just click once and you make straight selections. And when you go back to the start, it'll show you that circle icon, and that'll complete your selection. And then if you go down to your layer here, you could copy and paste that, copy, paste. Or you could just mask it, it's up to you. But now you have this kind of interesting hard edge shape that you could copy and paste a bunch of times. Another cool thing you could do to add to your Kaleidoscope image is you could use some brush presets. So in your image, maybe click on one of your layers and add a new blank layer to paint on. And go to the drop-down menu for brushes. And in that drop-down menu, there's going to be an options kind of gear icon. If you click on that, one of the options is to import brushes. So if you click on that, it's going to open up the import brushes dialog box, and I'm going to have a couple folders for you to download brushes from. And brush files are just going to, they're just random, brush files. But if you load them, should see some really strange brush options here. And so these are what are commonly referred to as stamp brushes. If I make these a little bit bigger, and let's use a different color here. Let's use some of the red and the rose. And again, I'm painting on my blank new layer. That's pretty cool. It adds a little splash of color. You don't want to click and drag with these brushes. You just want to click once. And that should give you a nice, interesting shape. From here, you can sort of copy and paste it and rotate it and just add little splashes of color. So I could go back in here and I could stamp a couple other brushes. Let's say the brush you're using isn't, oriented the right way. In the brush preset panel here, you just use this little rotate option, and that allows you to sort of rotate things. So I rotated that, and I'm painting that now. It's kind of a fun thing to add. So one of the other like handy copying and pasting tips is to copy into place. So if I select both of these layers right here, and I hit copy and Shift+Ctrl+V, that will paste them into the exact same spot. I can move my middle cursor here to the middle of my image, go to Edit, Transform, and then flip vertical. Whoa. Oh, I didn't move it to the middle there. Whoopsies. Gotta move it all the way to the middle of the document. Go to Edit, Transform, flip vertical, and that'll flip it all the way down here. So that can be a handy way to like save some time when you're copying and pasting, is to copy Ctrl+C and then paste, Shift+Ctrl+V to paste it into place, and then flip it from the middle by moving the middle anchor point to the middle of your document. All right, the last thing I'm going to show you is how to make automatic patterns. The reason I'm showing you this last is because it's kind of a shortcut, and I don't want you to only use this. I want you to use the other creative options first, and then maybe this later. There's a lot of steps to this, so I'm going to break it down for you. The first step is to just isolate an image for your pattern. Make it the size you want it to be. And then you're going to define this as a pattern. So you're going to go to Edit, Define Pattern. And you're just going to give your pattern a name. Rows, I think 4. And you're going to click OK. And then we're going to give it its own layer for our pattern fill here. So I'm going to turn off all the other layers so we can see what we're doing. And I'm going to create a new blank layer. I'm going to make sure that's the active layer for now. Then we're going to go to Edit, Fill. And the Fill dialog box is going to open up. Under Contents, you're not going to want it to be foreground color. You're going to switch it to Pattern. And then under Custom Pattern, you're going to go and find that pattern you just made. So scroll to the very, very, very bottom. Find the pattern you made. Okay. And then under Script, you don't want random fill or spiral or anything. You just want symmetry fill. You can go back in and mess with these if you want, but for now we're going to use symmetry fill. And we're going to click OK. And then the pattern dialog box is going to open up. And you're going to have a lot of different options. There's a crazy amount of customization in here. You have these wallpaper groups. There's all sorts of crazy, just insane things. My favorite is these rotational symmetry ones. You can mess with the sliders to affect the scale. Once you're all ready with your pattern, you're going to click OK. And you'll wind up with your random pattern fill. This is actually great for like a background. And that is the Kaleidoscope.